this whole ecosystem was protected and it's just flourishing.
Mm-hmm.
It's thriving despite humanity's efforts and nature's efforts to try to destroy it.
This is the Exploring the National Parks podcast with Dirt in My Shoes. My name is Ash, and I'm a former park ranger and the founder of Dirt in My Shoes. I think that the parks are best seen from the trail, and I'm here to make national park trip planning easy.
And I'm John. I carry the kids on the trails, I tell stories, and notice all the things that Ash doesn't care about much, like trees.
Join us as we show you around America's spectacular national parks.
We're sharing our favorite places, fun facts, adventures, and misadventures.
And we'll even throw in a little trip planning.
Let's start exploring.
Today we're talking about Congaree fun facts. But first of all, public service announcement. We found a really cool store on our last trip to Rocky Mountain.
Oh my gosh.
Rocky Mountain National Park, so it's in Colorado. It's right outside of Denver. And on the east side, you have the gateway town of Estes Park, which is where we usually stay. And downtown, there's a cute little Riverwalk area with a bunch of shops. Well, we found a shop that we've never seen before. I don't even know how long it's been there, but I feel like we wouldn't have missed it.
Yeah.
It's got John's name written all over it.
And we will never again not visit that store every time we visit Rocky Mountain National Park. It is now my favorite outside park visiting thing. It's just so good.
So tell them what it is, John.
It's a knife shop, but it's more than a knife shop. It is a certified dealer of Lord of the Rings replica swords. And it's incredible. They have a bunch of other stuff in there too, but like the Lord of the Rings stuff is what you're there for. They have Sting. They have the Lord of the Rings, so you've got Gandalf's sword. You've got Boromir's, King Theoden's sword. They even have Eowyn.
They have the big mace.
Yes.
What was the mace?
The Witch King's mace and his sword. They have King Elisar's sword, forged from the shards of Narsil. Flame of the West, given to Aragorn by Elrond himself after they reforged the sword so that he can be the king of Gondor and he can take back Middle-earth from the dark powers.
Needless to say, John fell in love.
Oh my gosh.
Love at first sight.
All of my fun money is now spoken for because I have hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars worth of swords that I now have to purchase.
We need a dedicated room at our house, I feel like, for John's Lord of the Rings swords that he thinks he's getting.
That I will begin to collect.
They had helmets, too. It was a really cool shop. So it was just like the downtown area of Estes, right?
Yeah.
Where everybody walks. And what's
right
it called?
Next to like taffy shops and stuff like that. You've got this armory of Middle-earth weapons.
What was it called? Blades?
Blades, I
think. So anyway, John's heart was so happy. I've never seen him happier. Not even on his wedding day was he happier.
Listen, he told me that a lot of people buy some of these swords to use to cut their wedding cake.
Yeah.
And
he's feeling very gypped at this point.
If I would have had a Lord of the Rings sword to cut my wedding cake, then I would have been as happy. I'm just kidding. I have never been happier than my wedding day. It was a wonderful day. It was a wonderful.
He was definitely happier in that knife shop. But anyway, it was fun. We went to Rocky for the elk rut, fall colors, all that. And so it was a really fun trip. But I would say that was probably the highlight for John.
Oh, man. They let me and my children hold them. And some of the swords are taller than my youngest son. And he felt the gravity of those swords. And I just loved it. So it's totally worth a stop for any Lord of the Rings fan out there. Plan a trip to Rocky Mountain National Park and to Estes Park, the Blades shop.
Now for Congaree. Now that important information was given away.
Oh my gosh. I got so excited. I have to maintain that level of energy through this whole episode. It's going to be intense. It's going to be a little hard, but I think we can do it because I am I am as excited.
No.
No, I love Congaree, but I love Lord of the Rings.
Listen, I will be very disappointed if you're equally as excited about Congaree as the knife shop, and our wedding is below that level. So,
yeah. Okay. Maybe let's have a short little reset here, and just let's reset the energy and the expectations. Because I do love Congaree National Park.
John came in. I was getting ready for the day, and he was just like brimming with excitement on some of the things that he found out about Congaree.
Yes.
So he is very excited, and I'm very excited because we're trying to talk about parks that don't get a lot of attention.
Right.
And so it's really fun to delve into some of these smaller parks that a lot of you out there might just be wondering, what's Congaree?
Exactly.
I've never even heard of that park. And honestly, most people haven't.
Yeah.
Most people don't go here. It's in South Carolina. We walked through the park in our Exploring Congaree episode just a couple weeks ago. So go listen to that one, maybe first, to give you a better overview of what it is. And then this one, we get to dive in deeper to some of the really cool stuff that you'll find here in this park.
And why this place is so special. Because it really is. I'm excited to talk about the park, but there's also a couple other reasons why I'm excited about today's episode. One of the reasons I'm so excited is because in my research, I figured out something that I knew was right, but ChatGPT told me I was wrong over and over and over again. Take that, machines. You know what? Take that. I felt like Dwight Schrute after he defeated the Dunder Mifflin website in sales for a day.
Yeah.
I was just like, you know what? I got this. It was so good.
For the record, we don't use AI very much because it's pretty much always wrong when it comes to national park stuff. It's like, it'll spit out answers and we'll be like, no.
Yeah.
If you've been to that park, you know that's not true.
I dip my toes in the water of AI every once in a while to, just kind of see maybe if I'm missing something, and I'm just like, every time I'm just like, I beat the machines.
Garbage.
I always beat the machines.
Yeah.
Okay. The other reason I'm excited is because I think I get to do something that will make my wife very happy. And for our newer listeners, if you don't know, or maybe our older listeners, if you don't know, the woman I'm talking to is my wife. I'm not just her co-host. She is my co-host with benefits. I'm even my co-host with kids. That's what she is.
Not benefits, just kids.
Well, a little bit of both there. But I get to do something that I think will make you pretty happy. Today, for the most part, we're skipping geology.
Yay! I gotta say, after the Mammoth Cave episode a little while back, you kind of wore me out on geology.
Yeah.
So, just kidding. That episode was super cool, but it might be nice to have a little reprieve.
Exactly. We'll be touching on it briefly, but mostly just to talk about why we're skipping it.
Okay.
Because it's a cool reason too. But yeah, I don't think we've ever done that before. Which will be fun.
No, I would say you never do.
Because I love geology.
There's so much geology.
Okay. So, like you mentioned a minute ago, if you haven't heard of Congaree National Park in South Carolina, you're not alone. It's one of the least visited national parks in the national park system, but it really shouldn't be because it's surrounded by, it's on the East Coast and it's surrounded by huge population centers and millions of people within just a few hours of drive time. The last few years, the national parks have seen huge record-breaking visitation. But
except Congaree.
Yeah. But Congaree, they broke their own records.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
they broke their own records. But even still, you compare it to Great Smoky Mountains, which gets between...
Well, you can't compare it to Great Smoky Mountains.
But we are going to.
Oh, that's like the biggest spread of visitation possible.
Exactly. Great Smokies gets between 12 and 14 million visitors a year, and it's just down the road from Congaree. But Congaree only gets 250,000.
Yeah,
tops.
I was going to say that's one day in Yellowstone during the summer.
It's true.
Just kidding. I don't think it's quite, but it does feel like it.
It does. But I mean, this relatively no national park. Ash, in one word, like what is probably the one word people generally use to describe the landscape or the ecosystem of Congaree?
Swamp.
Swamp is correct. Or, some people might say floodplain if they're being a little bit technical, but most people simply call it a swamp. And I don't think that word really does Congaree justice, because I think it has the completely wrong vibe. And I mean, no wonder if you have a name like Great Smoky Mountains compared to swamp,
Right.
it's not, nobody's going to spend their vacation going to the swamp. But the vibe shift is really what I'm hoping to do today, because the imagery of a swamp is kind of like, if you've ever seen the movie Neverending Story, it's like the swamp of sadness is what people are seeing.
Yeah.
Or if you've seen the movie with David Bowie, Labyrinth, it's like the bog of eternal stench. That's what nobody wants to spend their vacation in the bog of eternal stench.
Nope.
And so I think the word swamp needs a rebranding to give it a new vibe. So in order to get the right vibe, I am going to take us to the beginning. Not millions or billions or even trillions of years ago. No, I am taking us to a different kind of beginning. I'm taking us to the book of Genesis. Not chapter 1 with the 7 days of awesome where everything was literally spoken into being. Not Genesis 2 where God planted a garden and placed Adam and Eve in it. Not chapter 3 where the serpent appears, Adam and Eve eat the fruit, and humanity's first couple learn their fate. I want you to imagine in between the end of Genesis chapter 3 and the beginning of chapter 4, right after Adam and Eve get kicked out of the Garden of Eden, but before they have their first kids. There's at least 9 months in there that isn't covered. But I'm imagining their first moments just outside the garden, where they get their first glimpse of the fallen world. I've seen depictions of this moment before where it looks like they're entering a desert landscape, but for me, that just doesn't feel quite right. It could be, who knows? But stick with me, because I imagine the Garden of Eden being just the most beautiful, most pristine, most full of life place imaginable, with some of that energy possibly seeping out of the boundaries of the garden. And all of those rivers that are mentioned in Genesis, what if they flowed out past the boundaries of the garden? I don't imagine a desert. I imagine a place with abundant life and abundant water, but the pristine aspect is gone because it's a fallen world. So everything is darker, more dangerous, and you have to fight to survive. Now take those first steps with Adam and Eve as they exit the garden. All they've ever known is comfort and the sanctuary of the garden. They have some experience to draw upon, and Adam has named all the creatures, but their good natures have suddenly all changed, and they are entering a world where they suddenly don't know what they don't know. And as they head off into the new world hand in hand, they quickly recognize a few things. This new world is also beautiful, and it is teeming with life, and it has everything they need to survive, but around every turn, it is crawling and slithering and even roaring with danger. A world with all the upsides of opportunity and potential, but all the downsides of death and danger. The word that seems to best fit the world they stepped into is also the word that I think best describes Congaree National Park. Primordial. Scientists generally use that word to describe the soup or ooze that life first sprang from eons ago when Earth was still young, which is probably why I thought it reflected Congaree National Park, because most people simply refer to the ecosystem as a swamp, and it is that. But alone, the word swamp doesn't convey the excitement and the danger and the adventure that is literally lurking and slithering and buzzing around every curve here at Congaree National Park. Congaree is one of those very few places where you can imagine and actually witness life crawling out of the primordial muck that oozes through this landscape. It's a raw wilderness where the elements have never been beaten, and I personally have never felt so out of place. And I think you felt that way too.
Wow, crawling and oozing and What did she say? Slithering? That sounds about right.
It definitely does. But that's just part of the adventure. And that's why Congaree should be on everybody's bucket list, because you will have adventures and experiences here that you really can't have anywhere else, which we talked about some of those in the Exploring Congaree episode. So let's jump in and let me tell you why we are skipping geology today. Because in most national parks, when you go, you get to discover and explore geologic formations that formed millions and millions of years ago. In most Fun Facts episodes, we discuss how layers formed, when they formed, where they formed, and what happened to them. Did they get all crunched up and make mountains? Did a river cut through them and make a canyon? Did volcanoes burst their way to the surface? In most national parks, it seems like we are putting the pieces together of puzzles that formed millions of years ago and have been slowly eroding away. What is exciting about Congaree National Park is that the puzzle is still forming. One of our favorite jokes is that this place formed where, Ash?
Under a shallow sea.
Yeah. And some of those, a shallow sea, a river delta, a floodplain, that's where a lot of geologic layers form, because the rivers from these ancient places pull sediments and soil out of faraway mountains and deposit them somewhere new. Well, that is exactly what's happening here at Congaree National Park. The Congaree River, there's a ton of other tributaries upriver that are pulling sediments out of the Appalachian Mountains, and they reach here and they drop the sediments right here in Congaree. And over millions of years, that will form huge geologic layers. But because it's forming now, instead of talking about it in the past tense, we get to talk about the cool things that are happening here and now that are making it what it is now. And I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Because we never get to talk about stuff forming now. It's always stuff that formed eons ago.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty neat. And the number one natural force that is contributing to the unique landscape that is creating Congaree National Park is flooding. Fun fact number one is that on average, the Congaree River has 10 major flooding events per year where the water gets high enough to cover 90% of the entire national park.
Oh, that's a lot.
Isn't that crazy?
I knew there was some for sure, but that is crazy.
And the park is over 41 square miles. And so can you imagine 90% of that amount of space being covered at least 10 times per year by major flooding events? That's nuts.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Oh my gosh. And this is the fun fact that I think is the special ingredient of the primordial soup that makes all the other fun facts that we're going to talk about possible. Because without these massive flooding events, where nature kind of flexes its muscles, we wouldn't have Congaree National Park. And we'll cover that more in depth as we go on. But I think it's just crazy that 90% of this park gets totally flooded multiple times per year.
Yeah.
I have never lived in a place like that. Ash and I were looking at a house not too long ago that was in a floodplain, and it hasn't been flooded for over 100 years.
Because we don't get water here.
Exactly. And Ash and I were like, no, I don't think we want to live there.
No floodplains for us.
Exactly. It's
and we've never lived anywhere with that much water. And so it really does feel super foreign to think that this whole area just fills with water and then drains and then fills and then drains. Like it's really crazy.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, can you even imagine trying to build something like a house or a farm or anything?
Well, do people build in those? Floodplain? I mean, I know there's park structures that get covered in water, so I guess so.
Yeah, but not necessarily in Congaree National Park. Like the 10% that doesn't get flooded is mostly where the park structures are.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because building anything in Congaree National Park is kind of like building a sandcastle on the beach too close to the waves.
Yeah, and I guess that makes sense why when you look at the park map, there's really not much there as far as visitor services and things like that. There's very few access points into this park.
Exactly. This is one of those places on planet Earth where you can really see the power of nature, where to the person who is trying to change nature, it seems really destructive. Like someone trying to build their farm or plantation in this floodplain would be so frustrated. But if you just want to admire it, kind of like we do nowadays when you go to visit Congaree, you can really see how nourishing it really is. Because we talked about how the river drops tons of sediments here. But another way to describe that is it's dropping nourishment over 90% of the national park. It's dropping sediments and sand and dirt and all types of minerals that plants and animals can use and take advantage of and grow. Yeah. And it's something special that Congaree not only has adapted to survive, but depend on.
Right.
It's really cool. In the last episode, I compared Congaree to the Dagobah system in Star Wars, where it's a swamp-covered world that is just full of life, all kinds of life. Birds, bats, reptiles, amphibians, insects, monsters even that can swallow droids whole. But the one aspect of the ecosystem that I think gets a little overlooked because we're too busy cringing at the bugs and the beasts is what those creatures all live on, in, under, and around. The trees.
Yeah.
The trees are what hold everything together. And the trees, they even look different too.
They're not like any trees you ever see in Utah.
That is so true. But the root systems of these trees, they kind of hold everything in Congaree together, because without them, these massive floods that come through would just wash everything away.
Yeah, the erosion would be massive.
Yeah. One of the trees, which is probably our favorite tree in Congaree, is the bald cypress tree. And those ones, they're shaped to even slow the water down even more. And
and they you can see them just they're anchoring themselves into the ground with their root systems and stuff, but you can see it above ground. You can see kind of what they're doing too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and those ones, those are the ones we talked about last time, or in the exploring episode, where we mentioned that they have knees, what they call knees. And so you have this really fat base, kind of a twisted trunk on the bald cypress tree that's meant to slow down the river. And then even further out from that, you have these little shoots, it seems like, that pop up, all over the landscape that can be pretty tall.
Yeah.
But all it does, there's so many different explanations that scientists have for those knees.
Yeah, nobody actually knows, which I think is cool.
Yeah, they were even talking about on the NPS website, they're for 200 years, nobody has figured out what the whole purpose of the knees is.
Yeah.
Some people think that it's for stability, to keep the trees from blowing over. Some people think that it's for some type of internal minerals cycling between dry parts of the tree and wet parts of the tree. Some people think it has other uses, but they're just really cool, and they've developed specifically for this ecosystem to facilitate the process of flooding and to take advantage of it. And the trees have adapted so well to this habitat that Congaree National Park has a really cool nickname. It's called the Redwoods of the East.
Ah.
Now, I didn't see that nickname anywhere in the national parks itself.
Nope. It's a surprise to me.
Yes, I actually had to do some digging and I found that nickname, but because there's another nickname that I'll tell you about in a second. But the average forest canopy in Congaree National Park is over 100 feet tall, which is one of the highest temperate forest canopies in the world. But that's not all. Fun fact number 2 is
I feel like you just gave us 5 fun facts.
I know. There's so many fun facts.
All right. Fun fact number 2.
Fun fact number 2, the official number 2, is that Congaree National Park has the highest concentration of champion-sized trees anywhere in North America.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've heard the nickname the champion tree.
The home of champions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The champion tree nickname, whatever that was. Home of champions.
The home of champions.
Yeah, I knew that was a nickname. So
they have that as like the title of the Congaree National Park's NPS website, and there is like no explanation for it anywhere. You have to go to other places like the USGS.
Everybody's like, why?
Because this is where
you win when you come here.
We've been getting a lot of Olympians that visit Congaree National Park. Instead of going to Disneyland, they go to Congaree.
Yeah, the home of the champions.
Exactly. But Congaree National Park has 5 national champion trees and 27 state champion trees. And if you don't know what that is, what a champion tree is the largest known individual of a species.
Oh, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
How does it have so many? Holy smokes.
Yeah, it's incredible. Okay, so
I thought it was just like the biggest trees. I don't think I realized it has to be the biggest of its species.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Ah, that's
so
cool.
Now the tallest trees are not always the largest trees of a species, right? Because volume,
right,
like the diameter and the circumference of the trunk, can be a bigger determining factor. But Congaree has the tallest known specimens of at least 15 different species. So incredibly tall trees, but also in addition to that, a ton of champions, so the largest known, widest by volume individuals too, because everything here has just been allowed to grow and it's so wild and raw, and they've all adapted to this nourishment that comes from the constant flooding. And so it's so neat.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Now I want to go back and find them.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that actually do seek out. So on the exploring episode, we talked about how we didn't feel comfortable going when the whole park was flooded.
Right. That feels a little out of my my zone of skill.
Exactly. But that's probably the best time to go if you want to find champion trees.
Right.
Because
so
then
you can get through the waterways.
Easily navigate through stuff.
Yeah. As long as you don't get lost. I don't know how people don't get lost in there.
Exactly. But back to the concentration. For every 3 square miles in the park, there are 2 champion trees.
Wow. That's really cool.
It's so saturated with massive trees that when a champion tree falls, there's usually another one nearby that takes its place as the new champion.
Still in the park.
So
what kind of trees are... Because I think I remember the kayak guide saying that the bald cypress, I don't think the champion tree is there, is it?
Nope.
That's somewhere else. But like, are we talking about like loblolly trees?
Yes.
And
the most famous is the champion loblolly pine, which is over 170 feet tall.
Well, that's really tall.
It's huge.
170?
Yeah, and it's got a circumference of 15 feet. Now, if I remember right, it's still alive and still growing. If it gets like 10% taller, it's going to be the tallest tree on the East Coast.
I was going to say, I mean, so like the tallest redwoods are like, what, shy of 300? Yeah, somewhere
400.
around 3, so you're not at that level, but like that's a really, really tall tree.
Yeah. But the redwoods and the sequoias are outliers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so...
But you're in an area full of just trees everywhere. I mean, the East is just covered in trees.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really tall tree.
I know. It's incredible. And so some of the other trees, so we've talked about the loblolly pine. You've got the swamp tupelo, if you've ever heard of Tupelo honey, the laurel oak, the possum haw, and the sweet gum.
That's so cool.
But there's a lot more where you have those are just some of the champions. I said there's 15 species where the tallest trees are in Congaree National Park. It's so amazing because that's really what it's doing. It's like humans, we're one of the greatest adaptive creatures on the planet, and we have not figured out how to live and build things inside Congaree. But here you have these creatures that are like the largest of their kind thriving in this place.
Yeah, well, and having so much water come and go, that really does take extra stamina.
It does.
That's a lot of work to be able to live somewhere where the water levels fluctuate like that.
Yeah. Okay, now this is a little bit of a turn. My whole life, I've been told by teachers and history books that Native Americans used to carve canoes out of trees, right?
Yeah.
They would use fire to kind of burn out the middles, and then they would carve them into the right shape. But as we've traveled around the country, and I've seen forests all around the country.
You're like, that would have to be a really tiny person to fit into a canoe made out of those trees.
Exactly. I feel like I almost never see a tree large enough to make something that I would be like, yeah, I'll climb in there.
Yeah, I can sit in that. My birthing hips will fit between the two sides.
I've never thought about birthing hips in a canoe before.
Well, when you have hips, you notice when they don't fit places.
Yeah, that is true.
John doesn't have hips.
No.
Or a bum. It's just flat.
But I do have, and this relates to canoes, I have a very high center of gravity.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is higher, which is a problem in boats.
And really long legs. You would take up the whole canoe, just your legs.
Exactly. So I never understood how Native Americans would carve canoes out of trees. It just never made sense to me. But when you visit Congaree National Park, you see them all over the place.
Yeah.
It's like, especially when you've got trees that are over 100 feet tall and are massive at the base, like the bald cypress trees. Like, I'm looking at that, oh yeah, I could make a bunch of canoes out of that.
Yeah.
They're huge trees. But as I was learning about this place, I learned that in many ways it is the last of its kind. In movie terms, it's the last airbender, the last samurai, or the last of the Mohicans. There are so few places in our country that have avoided industrial logging efforts. I don't think people realize how hungry our country was as it grew and industrialized during the 19th and 20th centuries, and how much we've changed the entire landscape of our country to suit our needs.
Right.
Like, huge tracts of the east coast of the United States used to look like Congaree National Park does now, especially in the southeast. The two main forest types that you can see illustrated within Congaree National Park used to cover a space 6 times larger than the entire state of South Carolina.
Yeah.
Like, that's basically the whole southeast. Imagine old growth bottomland forests with massive cypress trees lining creeks, rivers, and floodplains. And then what they also have in Congaree, the longleaf pine savannas, slightly higher elevations where the waters usually wouldn't reach. But those two types of forest would cover like all of Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Florida. It was everywhere. Picking a tree to carve a canoe out of was a piece of cake. But you have to realize that since Columbus arrived in the New World, we've been slowly changing the landscape to suit our needs, draining swamps, cutting timber, establishing plantations and farms, building homes and businesses, damming rivers, and pushing back against nature in just about every way possible. And what that does, especially over the long term, is it makes it harder and harder to find places that resemble what it looked like before the Spanish arrived, or before the French or the English arrived. If you want to see North America more or less as the Native Americans saw it, it's almost impossible, especially if you're talking statistically, because a lot of the old growth forests that exist in the East today are hidden in small pockets or on steep alcoves or high elevation mountains, places that were hard to get to and so they couldn't be logged. But old growth forests in flat, relatively low areas were so easy to get to. They're incredibly rare. Recent estimates suggest that east of the Great Plains, only about 1 million total acres of old growth forests remain. That is 1/3 of 1% of all of our current eastern forests.
Ouch.
And so imagine trying to find some.
Yeah.
It's like, where are you going to go? 2/3 of that is located in the Great Smoky Mountains, the Adirondacks, and the Boundary Waters in Minnesota. But almost all of that is like higher elevation old growth forests. So they're not even in the same category as what we're talking about here in Congaree. To try and find virgin uncut forests that would have existed in the Southeast, you're probably looking at tiny parcels of land spread throughout 8 or 9 states that usually consist of 100 acres or less.
Mm-hmm.
There are almost no opportunities to wander through a forest that even remotely resembles the American Southeast pre-1492. The one exception is Congaree National Park. Fun fact number 3 is that Congaree National Park contains the largest remaining area of old-growth bottomland hardwood forest in the United States, period.
I don't get it. Why wasn't it cut down? Because it really, like, its proximity to even just Columbia, which is a fairly large city.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you're 20 minutes from Columbia, so this wasn't one of the first national parks.
No, it wasn't. So why was it? We're going to get to this. I'm glad
Okay, because as you were talking about that, I was like, how did it not get cut?
Yes, it was all about the ruggedness of Congaree National Park. That flooding action that happens at least 10 times a year that covers 90% of the park is so much more challenging and difficult than we can even imagine. Because
so they went for easier forests that they could log rather than having to deal with all the flooding.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
And so what happened was, like, in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, there was a family called the Beidler family, and they were based out of Chicago. And they bought, like 180,000 acres, I think, in South Carolina that they were planning on logging. Because, like I said earlier, the country was so hungry for energy and building supplies and things like that, that we were just gobbling everything up. Well, there was kind of an oversupply in the market at a certain point. And what most business owners did was they usually just kind of, once it became not profitable for them, they just sold everything off.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they clear cut everything and just sold it all off. Well, the Beidler family, what they did was they just decided to hold on to it. And they're like, well, maybe the market will change in the future, and then we'll be able to log it again when prices come back up and it makes more sense. So they held onto the land and they turned it into kind of like a recreation property. And what happens when people go to a place and they love it and enjoy it?
They don't want to cut down all their trees.
Exactly. And so the people that were taking part in recreation inside the property were like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. And then the market changed. The Beidler family was thinking, it looks like it might be economical again, it might be profitable again for us to do this. And then there was a big effort by a lot of the people, like, what's the name of the visitor center?
Harry Hampton.
The Harry Hampton Visitor Center. He was one of these people that stood up and was like, almost like a one-man show in a lot of ways. We got to protect this place.
So they didn't know the gravity of, like, what it would mean to keep it as far as preserving hardwood forests.
Not in any way that I just described.
Yeah.
Like how few, like 1/3 of 1% that's remaining in the country.
So they weren't like, oh, this is a really special, like, old growth hardwood forest, we should protect it. It was more like, hey, we really like kayaking here through the trees, which is fine. It doesn't matter either way. But I'm just, you know, a lot of times in the national parks, it becomes a national park because someone's like, oh, this is like something that we really need to save.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it sounds like maybe it wasn't exactly like that, as far as like they weren't maybe so concerned about saving something in particular, but just saving a feeling or a an experience.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know exactly their marketing plan.
Well, yeah,
and
but
how they
like
did
there
that.
wasn't like a specific theme.
They probably weren't like, we've got to save the the tallest loblolly in the country.
That's what I'm saying.
So I think it was more along the lines of like, there's not a whole lot of this left.
Yeah.
Maybe we should protect this.
And we really love it here. It's beautiful.
And the Beidler family, over the years, they still have a lot of land holdings, but over the years, they've added more and more, sold more and more of it to basically the national park system. So Congaree has expanded multiple times, and it's usually all from their land.
That's cool.
But what I think is cool is it's not necessarily for lack of trying that they didn't log this place.
Right.
They tried. And
I would imagine so. If you have money tied up into it.
What they would do is that they would actually, because it's so wet in this floodplain here at Congaree in the swamp, that they were like, what we need to do, we're going to cut rings around the base of the trees to kind of just kill the tree and then let it dry out. And then when it's dry, we'll cut it down and then we'll float it down the river. But it's so wet.
It never dried out.
It's so wet and moist. Every time they cut a tree down, it would just like sink to the bottom of the river. And the loggers were just so frustrated. It's just like, this is a waste. I hate this place. It's so rugged. It's so moist. It's so humid. We can't get far enough in. We can't build a mill. We can't, get into this land because every time it floods and washes everything away.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a core of 11,000 acres in Congaree National Park that was basically untouchable because no one could get in there and do the work because it just, first of all, it didn't make monetary sense, but also just the logistics of trying to create stuff was so difficult. This landscape is so intense. It was just impossible.
Yeah.
And so I love that. I love that that when you visit this place, you're entering a landscape that is unconquerable. It's undefeated.
Yeah. And
it just makes me so excited. It's the last remnant of the primordial southeast. So yes, it protects all of these champion trees, but it protects that whole ecosystem as well that makes it like, there's 45 different reptiles, 33 amphibians, 71 fish, 191 birds, all the different kinds of terrestrial and wetland plants and things like that. This whole ecosystem was protected and it's flourishing. It's thriving despite humanity's efforts and nature's efforts to try to destroy it.
Yeah.
So I think that's super cool. That's kind of the end of the scientific stuff. Like there's so many reasons to appreciate Congaree National Park scientifically. But I think for the last two fun facts, I really want to focus on the human history. And what's so cool is I think that both of these fun facts relate to the cause of freedom that happened in our country. And I think that's really cool. And so we get to talk about one of my favorite movies, The Patriot.
Okay.
I love...
You have so many favorite movies.
I know, I have so many. One of my favorite movies that relates to the United States.
Okay.
History.
Sure. Okay.
The history of the United States.
Okay. That narrows it down.
So we recently went to Boston, and before we went to Boston, we kind of watched The Patriot. We had an edited version that we watched before we went to Boston. So that
Ash does not do gore. I do not like gore.
Right.
Blech. Even the edited version was still like, oh, gross.
It was a little much
Too much for me.
But we watched the movie to kind of help prepare our kids a little bit for some of the Revolutionary War stuff that we were going to be seeing. And it's so cool to watch that movie. And what you don't realize is how much of the Revolutionary War was set in the South. Like South Carolina, so much happened in South Carolina. And the whole movie, The Patriot, is basically in South Carolina. You're fighting against the British, and Mel Gibson's character, Benjamin Martin, he's actually based on some real people that existed during the Revolutionary War period. What they don't show you in the movie is kind of how they traveled around back then. If you watch The Patriot, you get the feeling that people basically traveled like they do today. They hitch up their wagon or they get on their horse and they just kind of travel over land. But the reality is very different. People actually used to need to travel by boat way more.
Yeah.
And so like the river that they talk about a lot in the movie, the Santee, it's a real river.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually just downstream from the Congaree River at the very edge of Congaree National Park on the far southeast side. The Congaree River meets with the Wateree River, and then it becomes the Santee. And so the movie is happening right here in the area around Congaree National Park. There's some really cool stuff that happened around here. But the way that the different armies, like the British Army or the militias and things like that, they had all of these different outposts along all these different rivers, and that's how they would get supplies all over the place. They would travel up and down the rivers to get stuff to Columbia or to Camden and stuff like that. If you did travel over land, you didn't just have bridges everywhere. You had to take ferries across the different bridges. Well, Benjamin Martin, Mel Gibson's character. In the movie, the British give him the nickname the Ghost because nobody can catch him. His character was based on a few different real-life people, one of whom was named Francis Marion. And Francis Marion, he was a brigadier general here in the Southern Theater, kind of the Revolutionary War. And he was in charge of militia, just like Mel Gibson's character. And what he would do is he engaged in what was called the War of Posts, or I think in some other places they call it like the War of Bridges. And so what he would do is he would attack military outposts and then like attack them and then recede back into the swamps. Attack them and then like take some of their supplies and then recede back into the swamps. The British could not catch this guy. And he actually got the nickname the Swamp Fox. And so it's so cool because like in the movie The Patriot, you know, they always meet in the Black Swamp near the old Spanish mission. That's where the militia would always go and they would deploy from there. That was like real life. That happened.
In Congaree?
So this is where I defeated the machines. Okay. And I'm so excited about this because on the far east side, there's an area called Bates Ferry. Right?
Yep.
And I was kind of doing some research because what happens is the Congaree River, when it floods, it will often change its course. And so as it floods, you know, if it does a big meander out and, you know, come back, sometimes when it floods, it will cut off that big meander and you get what's called an oxbow lake. Right?
Yeah.
And so multiple times throughout history, the Congaree River, people have had to rebuild ferries because the Congaree River changed its course. The Bates Ferry used to be called the McCord Ferry. And the McCord Ferry was on one of these kind of abandoned oxbow bends. Now, that McCord Ferry wasn't originally in Congaree National Park when it was first established as a national monument. That whole southeast section near where the confluence of the Wateree and the Congaree meet, that was added later. Okay. And there was a big battle that happened near that southern section of the park. It's called Fort Mott. Basically what happened was the British, when they came through the area, they're like, we got to take control of all of these strategic locations on the rivers where we can be in control of supply depots. We can easily get our supplies back and forth everywhere we went. Francis Marion, his goal was to disrupt and blow up things as much as he could. And so Fort Mott, where this McCord Ferry was, it was the home of a patriot woman and her family. The British came, took over the home, and then Francis Marion came along and was like, we're going to attack this place. they laid siege to Fort Mott. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The woman was so in favor of the Patriot cause after they realized we're not really having a whole lot of success. She's like, burn my house down. And so she like gave the militia and Marion's men arrows that they could light on fire, and they basically burnt her house down. She's like, I do not want the British in my house.
Mm-hmm.
And so she burnt it down. Where I was like, I know it says in multiple places that the American forces, Marion's militia, they actually set up camp on McCord Ferry, like right around McCord Ferry. And I was like, I don't want to share a fun fact that's not really in the national park.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kind of like Fort Mott is just outside the park boundaries. I was like, I know the Congaree River has changed its course multiple times. Well, I asked AI, I was like, just trying to get something somewhere. Was this in the national park boundaries? Where was the McCord Ferry? What had happened and things like that? And AI was like, no, it never, it didn't happen inside the national park. Well, I found some websites that prove that that section of the park that was added later that has a big abandoned oxbow of the Congaree River, which is called Old Bates River, that is well within Congaree National Park's boundaries. And that is where the American forces basically staged themselves to get ready for that siege.
Nice.
And so in the McCord Ferry, the family that ran the ferry, they were super patriot too. And so let me read you this cool quote because it's so fun, because the lady that ran the McCord Ferry, she was hated by the Royal Justice of the Peace, Levi Smith.
What was her name?
Her name is Sophia Nisba McCord.
All right.
Interesting
I feel
name.
like we need to say some women's names in here.
Absolutely. So there was a letter written from the Justice of the Peace. This woman, Sophia Nisba McCord, who lived on the road from Camden to Charlestown and kept a tavern and ferry, which was the McCord Ferry, was a person of notorious disaffection to the British cause. In short, her ill behavior was so glaring that Lord Rawdon, on the 25th of March, 1781, sent Captain Munro of the Volunteers of Ireland with a small party of that regiment, with orders to burn her house and order her never to be found within 20 miles of the river again. Because she was such a problem for all of the British who were trying to use her ferry to set up this outpost at Fort Mott.
Mm-hmm.
And so, fun fact number 4 is that Congaree National Park at the McCord Ferry was a staging ground to fight back against the British outposts in the area.
Nice.
And so it was part of the cause of freedom. And if you watch the Patriot movie, you'll see kind of how Francis Marion, the real person, the swamp fox, how he basically used the landscape of Congaree National Park to his benefit, because he would attack and recede, and they would never catch him in this swampy floodplain environment.
That's cool. That's very cool.
Oh, I love it. I'm just so excited because so much happened. Like the Revolutionary War and stuff, it wasn't all in New York. It wasn't all in New Jersey and Philadelphia and, all the stuff that you see in Hamilton. So much stuff happened down here to keep General Cornwallis down south, to keep him away from George Washington. This guerrilla warfare that was part of the cause of freedom of these patriots, it was lived out and it was fought in Congaree National Park.
Cool.
The next fun fact is a little bit messier and still relates to the cause of freedom, but it's a little bit different in that it's after the Revolutionary War and it's about slavery is really what it's about. Congaree National Park was the location of a maroon camp with one of South Carolina's most wanted fugitives. So a maroon is an escaped slave.
Oh, okay.
Basically. And so what a maroon camp is it's just a bunch of escaped slaves that kind of form like a transient community,
Okay.
because they're kind of on the run.
Okay.
And you can kind of see it portrayed in The Patriot a little bit after the Dragoons, they burn down Mel Gibson's sister-in-law's house. He sends her and his whole family, they go to a Gullah community. And a Gullah community is, sometimes they're maroon camps too, but it's basically like a community of freed or escaped slaves.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're usually a little bit further out and
separated. They like to stay away from people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that they don't get pulled back in or captured and things like that.
Yeah.
Congaree National Park was the site of one of these maroon camps, and the head of that maroon camp was named Forrest Joe. And he formed this maroon camp, and a lot of times they would raid plantations. People got killed. He was able to free some other people, but it got pretty messy. He was able to hide in Congaree National Park, like right near the confluence, once again, kind of like where McCord's Ferry was. That section on the east side of Congaree National Park, right near the confluence of the Wateree River and the Congaree River, was kind of like his home base. And he was a master riverman. They looked for him for over 2 years.
Wow.
And
he's just hiding in the swamp.
They could not find him.
Yeah.
And his community, they were moving in and out. And once again, like the forest, kind of like how we talked earlier, that 11,000 acres of core old growth forest within Congaree National Park is like untouchable. And it's so hard to get into. But Forrest Joe and his community learned how to live in these situations. And they were just incredible at, going out, getting supplies, coming back. Sometimes they would go out and free somebody. One of the messiest parts is there was another enslaved person that he killed because that person turned in his wife.
Oh.
And so it's kind of like there's just a lot going on, but he was just so good at navigating the rivers and navigating through the swamps. Just like Francis Marion, he was a swamp fox and he was a ghost, and he could easily outmaneuver just about anybody in this area.
I can't imagine knowing the area well enough to do that. That's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of amazing. Broad picture, the maroon camps, there were a lot of them throughout the Southeast over 50 years or so. Like they were saying, there was another big one kind of up north in Virginia that over like 50 years, 50,000 different maroons lived in. And so Congaree National Park is a little bit smaller than that, but it definitely was still part of the history along the road to freedom. And so I just think that is really cool that this specific place still resembles the world in which these people lived.
And you'd have to be a master survivalist.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about all these people who were not able to conquer the trees in this forest and stuff, It's just, it puts a cool light on what Congaree is and what it feels like when you're there now.
Definitely.
Because I definitely felt that. Like we mentioned before, as we're walking around going, this place is not like anything we've ever experienced before. And just the sense of discomfort that I had as we were kayaking on Cedar Creek and listening to the guides talk about how they like to come in when it's flooded so they can go off their side trails and explore a little more and stuff. And I'm just thinking, ooh, heck no. No, thank you for me.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's pretty remarkable. And watching the guides on Cedar Creek, like, notice all the snakes and spiders and creatures and stuff. And I was like, I thought that was a branch. Like, that would have killed me if I tried to hide in this area for any reason.
Exactly.
I would not survive. So
I know. This place is just so unique. It really is one of the last places where you can like see the primordial southeast. And I love that you brought up, the survivalist aspect of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's so cool to put yourself, a modern person used to modern comforts, into this ecosystem. It's remarkable. It feels so crazy and so out of your element, and everybody should do it.
Think about that while you're there, because it will make it feel even better.
Yeah.
So your task for today, we've thought long and hard about this. And it's a good one. Go watch The Patriot.
Yeah.
And notice the things that we talked about in this episode. Kind of apply what Congaree is to where they are in the movie and how they pop in and out of the hiding spots and stuff. It just makes it more fun. So go watch the movie and then start planning your trip to Congaree National Park.
And if you're enjoying the podcast, please give us a 5-star review. We sure appreciate you. And we hope that you're able to go get some dirt in your shoes.